Today is Wednesday, and we are continuing to explore the theme of harvest through the book of Ruth. As I enter into prayer now, I pause to let go and to let God. To breathe slowly, to let all that I am wait quietly before God. Creator God, stir up a hunger in me that seeks to live not on bread alone, but on every word that comes from your mouth. Following on from yesterday, Naomi had returned to Bethlehem accompanied by Ruth, her Moabite daughter-in-law, just as the harvest was beginning. We will continue in chapter 2, verses 1 to 3.
Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favour." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech.
God is at work whether or not we can see his unfolding plan. Having just been told that Naomi has a distant relative called Boaz, we are then informed that Ruth finds herself gleaning in the field of Boaz. Ruth, we remember, is a foreigner. These fields, let alone their owners, are all unfamiliar to her. And yet, she chooses to work in a field that belongs to Boaz. God is patiently carrying out his plans. Do I sometimes get frustrated at God's hidden plan? Do I ever feel that God is taking his time? I remember now that God's ways are not my ways. The two women had thought they were on their own. With both of them widowed, they had no protector and no income. They were in a vulnerable position. However, God's heart for justice has ensured that even the most vulnerable in society be cared for. For within the community of his chosen people, he had established laws that allowed the poor and needy, including foreigners and widows, to collect up grains left over from the harvest. Looking around today, despite a society's best efforts, there are still individuals and families who fall between the gaps. There are real people facing real hunger and real poverty in our own neighbourhoods. God, may you guide my prayers for such people now. As I return to the word, may I have the ears to hear.
Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favour." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech.
Gleaning was hard work. To traipse around the fields, fully exposed to the force of the weather, gathering up the leftovers, it was a physically demanding task. In our world of supermarkets and online deliveries, with shelves overflowing with countless pre-packaged forms of wheat, barley, and their gluten-free equivalents, it can become easy for us to take food for granted. But farming across the globe continues to be a physically demanding job. As I use my senses to picture different types of farmlands and plantations, as I imagine the smells, the sounds, and the sights of harvest, to imagine the feel of dry stalks or plump plants in the harvester's hands, guide me to pray for those who work the land to feed me. Ruth was proactive. It was her suggestion that she go to the fields to pick up the leftover grain. The harvest rules existed to enable people like Ruth and like Naomi to eat, but they had to put in the work. Not only did Ruth take the initiative, responding to an obvious need in an obvious way, but she was a diligent worker. So much so that her work ethic had been noted by Boaz's harvesters. Perhaps there are some obvious needs that I could assist with. Lord of the harvest, give me the hunger to be able to echo your Son Jesus' words in saying that my food is to do the will of my Father, joining him in his work. May I share Jesus' deep compassion for others. I recognise that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Help me to be brave enough to say, "Send me." Amen.